Like Sir William Sero, I didn't get the opportunity to serve on the select committee that was reviewing this bill, so this is the first time I've come into contact with it. But I too am happy to have a say in this debate and share the very positive views that have been expressed by members so far in supporting a move to modernise and to streamline and strengthen the governance of the protection of historic places and our heritage in this country. It seems very appropriate that in doing this, sir, the bill should fully recognise the interests of tangata whenua in protecting and celebrating our heritage, and that seems entirely appropriate. And when I think about, and I've just with particular attention, sir, to subpart 2, the National Historic Landmarks, ngā mana whenua o Aotearoa, me ona kōrero tuturu, in terms of the establishment of a kind of a sort of premier category of landmark sites. This seems to be a really good development, and when I think about what kind of sites might qualify for that special status, and think about around the country what kind of places, the ones that spring to mind most immediately are sites that are. And this is obviously my own personal perspective here, but I would imagine it's things like, as the Minister suggested, the Orako, the site of the Battle of Orako would be a prime candidate. I would have thought Parihaka would again be the sort of place that is immensely significant, not only for Māori, but for this country's modern history, last couple of hundred years, for a whole range of reasons, enormously significant. Waitangi, of course, would be an obvious candidate. I would have thought the Chatham Islands, Rekohu, the site of the primary site of the massacre, and the name of that site escapes me at the moment, but it's a specific place on the Chathams where probably the worst concentrated violence took place during the genocide on Rekohu. So those sorts of places which are enormously significant in the telling of the stories of this country, and I'm sure everybody will have their own ideas about what should qualify. But it seems to me that the innovation that subpart 2, the list of national historic landmarks, the innovation that brings to the heritage system, I think, is very, very welcome. Just more broadly in part 4, in terms of establishing a system for historic sites, again, you start to think about what kind of places might be worth recognising and protecting in this way, and I thought about Port Craig, which is a really interesting settlement down on the Southland coast, where in the early years of the 20th century there was a thriving settlement there, establishing a timber mill in the most hostile of conditions, and you can actually visit the historic settlement today. Hundreds of people there tried to scratch out a living at Port Craig, and there are still some buildings and some historic artefacts that are there today, and it's a pretty extraordinary part of our early settler history. For me personally, there would be things like the Blackball miners' strike in 1908. That was a seminal point in the early 20th century development of labour relations in this country, and led to not only, of course, the formation of the New Zealand Labour Party, but much of the legislation on welfare and labour issues in the 20th century. The first State House in Fife Lane in Miramar may well be worthy of recognising as an historic site, sir. As an Aucklander, when I think about the volcanoes that all over, Mr. Chairman, all over the Auckland Isthmus, the volcanoes that were quite intensively cultivated and inhabited in the hundreds of years prior to colonisation, and now are right in the middle of our country's biggest city. And they are worthy, as many people have proposed, not only sort of historic and heritage protection, but as sublime natural features in our landscape would be worth protecting as well. So I just want to say that I think that this is really a bill, sir, that will do a lot of good in modernising and reforming this area. If the effect is to strengthen the protection of our heritage and to make it more effective and more efficient, then that'll be a success. But I think also there's every indication that the reforms will also make it easier for the public to understand and engage with our heritage, and that also would be a tremendous benefit.
I call Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a brief contribution on Part 4 of this bill, and obviously from the Labour Party's point of view, we do support this legislation.